Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I have a new video for you today, which is how I'm going to make a custom dress for one of my clients out of a sheet and a Doona cover that she found. She found these bed linens at, I think at an op shop or like a garage sale or something like that. And she really liked the pattern and she messaged me asking if they would be something that I could turn into a dress or an outfit or something for her. So I met with her and she showed me the fabrics, and there's plenty of fabric here, especially because the Doona cover has the print on both sides, so it's like two sheets, and then the sheet is like a king size sheet or something as well, so there's plenty of fabric in that. And she just really liked the colors and the patterns on them and she thought they'd go together really well, so we came up with a design together and I'm going to try and make that for her today. Basically I'm going to be taking a pattern that I have already made, and what I'm going to do is use the top pattern and attach it to a tiered skirt, which is kind of easy to make because it's basically just rectangles of fabric. She wanted a few tiers in the skirt and we talked about having a drawstring waist, something really comfortable to wear, just something that she can throw on, especially when it starts to warm up. It's got short sleeves. I think this is all cotton, this fabric, so hopefully it's just a nice, really cute kind of boho style dress, really easy to wear, and I'm excited to try and make that for her today. So I'm going to basically show you how I'm going to do it. It's going to be a bit less of a tutorial and more of a watch how I make this thing video, but yeah, let's get into it. I'm just going to start by cutting apart or unpicking the edges of this Doona, because at the moment I can't really get into the Doona or cut it out without cutting out two pieces at once, which would be fine if I was cutting pieces where I needed a pair of each, but I actually don't for this pattern. I need two different pieces. So I'm going to get this open and then I can start cutting out my top pieces. Hi, it's voiceover Carly. I'm just coming in to talk you through kind of what I'm doing while I was making this dress. So you might notice that as the video goes on, I'm in a totally new studio. I did move house and a few things happened that meant it was a long time between when I started filming this video and when I finished it just recently. So I started making this dress in 2019 and obviously 2020 happened and it's the beginning of 2021 now, and I gave this back to Sandra all finished at the end of last year. So yeah, this did end up being a really long project, not only because I took a big break in the middle, but because I didn't realize how long it was going to take to sew some parts of it and I kept putting it off. But yeah, I mean, this video is obviously not a tutorial as such, but if you are following along and you pick up any tips or information that's helpful to your sewing projects, then that's all I can really hope for. So I hope you enjoy the video. I'm just going to come in and explain some of the things I'm doing as we go. So right now what I'm actually doing is I'm going to fuse this piece of fabric so that I can cut out my facing pieces. And all fusing does, if you haven't used it before, is it gives your fabric a little bit extra sturdiness so that it's not going to stretch and it's going to hold its shape. And you might want to use this on areas where you just want something to be really crisp, or you just like want it to hold its shape, like in a collar, in cuffs on a shirt, stuff like that. So I have this huge roll of iron-on fusing because my nana gave it to me, which was great. I've been using it for years and it's just like a really lightweight fusing and it's perfect for this project. I've just ironed it onto my fabric. So I've already cut out my front and back pieces for the top. Now I'm just cutting out those facing pieces. Okay, I think I've now cut out all the pattern pieces I needed to out of the first fabric, which I'm going to call the large print because there's like a large print and a small print, except for the skirt. So I've done the top pattern so far, and I'm very quickly losing daylight because it's winter and the sun is going down around 5 p.m. But I only have a few more things I think I really need to cut out. So I've got to do the rectangles for the skirt now. Because I'm doing a tiered skirt and because I want it to kind of be gathered in around the waist, the top rectangle is going to be, say, this length, and then the next rectangle will be this length, and then this, and then this, obviously on like a much larger scale. But the top one needs to be the smallest one, but it still needs to be gathered in, so I kind of need to work out a measurement and then go from there. So basically what I'm doing now is I've just calculated how much width I want in each piece of the tiered skirt. So I'm going to multiply by 2.2. So I've got the first waist measurement, which is just the bottom of the top, which is already like a loose waist measurement, and then that's going to get cinched in with the waist cord, drawstring. And so starting with that measurement, which is, it's just over 100 centimeters, so I'm just going to make it 100 centimeters, and then that'll be the width of the first tier. No, wait, I've done this wrong. Damn it, I stuffed it up. So I actually need to multiply that by 2.2, the first measurement. I have to go back and do all my measurements again. Anyway, what I'm going to end up doing is cutting all the pieces from both of these fabrics, and some of them I'll have to stitch together at multiple seams because the length I need is, or the width I need is wider than the fabric itself. And I'm just going to be doing like a whole lot of gathering, but as I said, the sun's almost gone down, so I'll see what I can get done tonight, and I think I'm going to go inside when the sun's gone down because it's freezing. But yeah, I have to go back and do some quick math, and then I will start cutting out these tiers. Okay, just before we lose all our light, I'm just going to show you, I've decided that this bit of hem at the top of the sheet is kind of the perfect width for my drawstring casing for the dress. So I'm cutting about 1 centimeter below where the seam is. I will use that to attach it to the top, and then I'm going to just open, actually I think it's already open, that bit at the side there, and I'll put my drawstring through there eventually, and then that bottom part, so it'll be about that wide once it's on the dress, if that makes sense. But I just thought that's going to save me kind of a row of stitching because I would have had to make that casing a different way, which I probably would have used 2 separate pieces of fabric and stitched them together like this, and then attach them between the top and the skirt. So I've just saved myself a little bit of time there, and more economical use out of this sheet too, probably, because otherwise I probably would have gotten rid of this piece. So yes, that's just come in really handy. Okay, I'm probably going to finish filming for the night here because it's really dark now and it's getting really cold, so I'm going to go inside soon. But I'll keep working on this tomorrow, and I'll talk to you then. Here's a tip for you guys. If you've ever wanted to add pockets to a pattern that didn't already have them, it's really easy to draft your own pocket patterns. I usually just trace around my hand like a big blob like this shape here, with about 1 inch of space around it, and you can see it easily fits an iPhone in there as well. And then just add your seam allowance to the side, and the reason it's like that kind of twisty blob shape is so that you don't catch it in your side seams when you're stitching the rest of your garment. And here are all of my skirt pieces. I'm just grouping these together because I'm going to be putting those pockets onto that top panel piece there.
So because it was one long piece which would only have one seam down it, I had to cut it in half so that I have 2 side seams to attach the pockets into. So here I'm just attaching the pockets to the side seams and then just doing a top stitch to make it nice and neat. And then I'll sew the 2 panels of the top tier of the skirt together on one side. For the rest of the tiers of the skirt, I had long strips of fabric that I had to sew together so that I had enough fabric to gather in. So here I'm just connecting all of the pieces of the different tiers of the skirt together and just trimming off the bits of the Doona there that had buttons and stuff in them. Then just getting on the overlocker and overlocking all of those seams as well. So you might notice I've changed studios at this point, but I'm just at the part where I'm starting to gather all of the tiers. So I'm just running a really wide, loose stitch through the top of each tier, and I do 2 rows of that when I'm going to do gathering. Now this is the part that took the absolute longest. I had so much of the length of the fabric in the very bottom tier, like I just totally underestimated how long this was going to take. But I think I went with a 2-to-1 ratio or something like that. So I just measured like twice as much fabric in that area and then pinned it in place. So you can see how I'm pinning it in different increments. That was the easiest way for me to do this with such a long piece of fabric together. So after I had pinned it all, that was when I started pulling the threads at different places along the piece of fabric until all that fabric fit into the piece above it. Once it was all gathered and pinned in place, all I had to do was sew that tier to the next one up from it, and then again and again and again until I had done all of the tiers. The good thing was the bottom one obviously had the most fabric in it, so once I got that one out of the way, it was a lot quicker after that.
Late, but I'm going to catalog all these things so that when an episode comes up and I need some extra juice.
So I figured out a new system for how to pin all of this fabric with you know, enough space left between each pin that I could gather the right amount of fabric, if that makes sense. There's kind of like a little bit of maths involved, I guess, when you're going to gather fabric. But I just pinned, I think I folded it into eighths, and I put a pin at every eighth of that tier, and then did the same on the next one down. And that way I could match up the pins and then just gather all the excess fabric into that space.
Okay, it's literally been so long since starting to make this dress that I've like forgotten how to use my camera because I haven't been filming, and I had a big break from this project because I moved house and a lot of stuff happened, and it's been about a year. But I've slowly been trying to get back on track with this project, and I've just finished gathering the second tier of the skirt into the third one, and then I've got to gather the third one into the fourth, and I think that's the last one I have to gather, or I might have to gather that one into the top as well. But they get smaller and smaller each time, so it's slowly getting quicker and quicker, but I can't believe how long it's taken for me to get to this point. But I think I'm getting really close to the end now, so I'm going to go and sew this and gather the other tier, and then we're going to start working on the top part of the dress.
Okay, so don't mind how grumpy I look in this shot, but you can see here how the skirt starts flaring out more and more with each tier, just because there's like so much extra fabric in each part. Another really annoying thing about this project was just having to take out so much gathering thread, but that's what happens when you gather a lot of fabric. This part was actually pretty satisfying though, so I overlocked all of the seams where I had done the gathering, and because there was all that extra fabric there that was just all bunched together, overlocking it just really made it like so much more neat and tidy.
Alright, I've got the skirt part all sewn together now. There's just one side that's still open, which I'm going to obviously sew shut when I attach it to the top. And we've got one pocket already put together in this side here, and the other one, the pieces are sewn on the side, ready to sew shut. So I'm going to do that after I've attached it to the top. So I'm just about to put the pieces of the top together now. And then I've got this piece of the Doona, which was already sewn, folded over and sewn. So I'm just going to recycle that into the drawstring casing between the top and the skirt. But right now I'm just going to sew the side seams of the top. I think I've also got to put in the, oh my god, I forgot what it's called. The facing. Which kind of holds the shape of the neckline, and then I've got the ties to put on the back of that, and the little sleeve caps to put on as well. So I'm about to go and do all of that. Maybe I'll even get it finished today.
I found the top pieces of my dress a little squished in wherever I was keeping them, so they are a bit crinkled, but I can iron that out. This tool is called an awl or a stiletto. I've heard it called a few different things, but it's just to mark a little hole in the fabric, especially for darts and things like that. So whenever I punch one of these holes, my patterns have the hole marked on them about 1 centimeter short from where you're going to actually sew the dart, and that ensures that when your piece is finished, you don't have any visible holes in it. When you're sewing darts as well, there's no need to back tack at the end when you get to the point. If any of your threads are going to unravel, it's not going to be that big of a deal, and I usually leave a 1 to 2 centimeter tail of thread and let them just kind of curl around each other. If you really want to keep it secure, you could tie them in a knot, but I've never had a problem with darts like opening up from the inside. So this has always just worked for me. Now I'm just about to press my darts. I do have something called a tailor's ham, which is just like a hard stuffed round ovally shaped thing that you use to iron a curve, but I can't find it at the moment, so I've been using the arm of my mannequin. But you could also just use a rolled up towel or a piece of clothing, just something that's going to give you that shape, because when you iron a dart, you don't want to just iron it flat, because you're going to squish that curve that you're creating in the garment. So I'm almost up to the part where I attach the facing, but first I'm just preparing the little bow ties for the back of the dress, which is like the closure for this dress, because I'm going to be inserting them in between the outer layer and the facing. I've just pressed them so that all of the seam allowance is on the inside, and then I'm just reshaping the ends so that they come to a point instead of being square. I just thought that would be a nice, cute way to finish them. So I'm just overlocking around all of the pieces of the facing, and then I'm going to attach them together at the shoulder seams, and then I'm going to attach them all to the outer part of the top. Once I got to the point of the back where I wanted to attach those ties, I just stopped my sewing machine, pulled it out, and I just sandwiched one of the ties up in between the two pieces of fabric, so that when I turn the garment the right way around, the tie will be on the outside. And then I just repeated the same for the tie on the other side as well. Now I'm just doing a top stitch on the facing side of the fabric, attaching the seam allowance to that facing there, and that stops the inside fabric rolling to the outside, so when you're wearing it, the inside doesn't start peeking up through the collar. I also just did a top stitch around the little U shape that I have at the back of this top, just to keep it nice and flat. So there's my little ties. I'm really happy with how this turned out. The bow looks really cute on the back. I had planned to sew the skirt to the top before I sewed the final side seam shut for the whole length of the dress, but I forgot that when you include a drawstring, you can't sew a side seam on that tube, otherwise the string won't be able to go through unless you cut a hole in it or something. So instead I sewed the side seam up. I just attached my little label as well. I've also just gone ahead and put a tiny little stitch, you can't even see it, on both of the shoulder seams through to the facing, just to keep it in place and stop it from flipping to the outside. Here I'm just attaching the drawstring casing. I decided to use a buttonhole stitch to make the holes where the drawstring is going to come out. Ideally for a buttonhole you'd use something called tearaway, but because I have such a huge supply of that fusing I showed you that I got from my nana, and it is kind of the same stuff as tearaway, like it tears really easily, I have just been using scraps of that, and I just sew my buttonhole on the fabric where I want it with a piece of that behind it, and then that just helps to keep a really nice neat buttonhole, and then you can tear it off the back when you're happy. I always do a couple of test buttonholes as well, just to make sure I've got the length right. And my machine has a setting where you set the length once and then you can just really quickly make that same buttonhole over and over again. So I've just gone and put the 2 buttonholes into the casing for the drawstring. Now, because the casing was already stitched shut, I did have to open it up just in this part here so that I was only going through one layer. Because if I went through both, the string wouldn't actually come out of the hole. So I've just gone ahead and done that. And then the other thing I had to do with the casing was open it up at the edges so that I can make it a tube all the way around the waist, and the drawstring is going to go all the way through. So now I'm just sewing that casing shut under where I did the buttonholes, and now I'm going to attach it to the top. Now I'm just lining up the edges of the casing for the drawstring so that I can turn it into one long circular tube, if that makes sense, before I attach the skirt. And then I'm just also sewing up the side seam of the top. So you can see here now that I can flip that tubing shut, but the drawstring will still be able to go through the side seam. Now I'm also just sewing the last side seam of the skirt shut too, so that I can attach this to the top. So once again, I just have to gather the top tier of the skirt into the waist, which is the casing for the drawstring. So I'm just doing that again, and we're almost finished, guys. We're getting really close. So my camera ran out of battery for the last part there, but I've gone ahead and attached the top to the skirt. All looks really good. Here's the 2 little holes where I'm going to thread the drawstring through. So I'm about to make the drawstring now, but I'm just getting a rough idea of the length I'll need by tying some fabric around my waist. I ended up with this piece of fabric. I think I trimmed one of the layers of the fabric or something like that, and then this fabric already had, like, it was already cut in a straight line and it was really long, so I ended up using that for my drawstring. I just had to pull out these threads first. So of course there's a few different ways you can thread a drawstring through a casing like this. You could use a safety pin, but I find sometimes the safety pin pops open when you're halfway through and then it gets caught and it can be really annoying. So instead, because I had extra of the length of string, I just actually sewed it shut and then threaded it onto a paper clip and then used the paper clip to guide it through the casing. So one of the last things I had to sew was the sleeves. I think I mentioned these pieces before and called them sleeve caps, but that's not what they're actually called. So these are armbands, and they go on the ends of the capped sleeves that I have on this top. So it just kind of gives a little bit extra length to the sleeves, but they still look like really cute little cap sleeves, and it's a really nice, neat way to finish them. So these are cut on the bias, which means they're cut diagonally and they have a tiny bit of stretch, which is perfect for sleeves because if you're anything like me, I find it really difficult to get my sleeve to match up with the armhole sometimes. So all I had to do for these was iron them so that the seam allowance was tucked in and that they were folded in half as well. And then here you can see I'm just sewing the side of them shut, so there'll be a loop. And now I'm attaching one side to the top, and then what I'll do is fold it in half and do a top stitch so that it's like a bind on the edge of the sleeve cap. Alright, I'm just finishing up this project now. I'm just doing an 8mm rolled hem. So I'm just turning the fabric at the bottom twice and then sewing it and then rolling it as I go. Oh my god, I've done it. I think I've finished the sewing. Oh my god. That was so much hem. I think there's over 10 meters of hem. Okay. Okay guys, excuse the wobbly camera, but I have just finished this dress for the second time. It now only has 3 tiers of the skirt, and how much better does that look? I can't get over how much of a difference it makes. So it's obviously significantly shorter, so it's now like a 3/4 length. See how it just sits so much nicer now? And the craziest part is I weighed what the whole dress weighed. It was 1.3 kilos. And then the bottom part that I took off was 500 grams alone. So once I cut it off, the bottom part was like 40% of the whole weight of the dress at the time. So now it's heaps lighter, sits so much better. The skirt isn't pulling down on the top anymore because I like the look of this being a bit like blousy, you know, like this is all kind of like sitting over the top like that. But with the skirt as heavy as it was before, it was like, I don't think it'd be comfortable. I think that waist drawstring would actually start pulling down on your hips. So it's heaps better. So I actually obviously spoke to Sandra, like I mentioned before, but she like totally agreed that it would look better and feel better if it was lighter. And I forgot to show you the other day, obviously I've shown you while I've been making it, but look, it has pockets, nice deep pockets, and the beautiful bow at the back. Look at that. So flippin' cute.